Have you ever looked at someone whose life you admire and thought, I wish I had what they have? Their impact, their freedom, their calm confidence, but then immediately talked yourself out of it with, but their path was different. They got lucky. That could never be me. I used to do that all the time. I'd read biographies, watch interviews, and study the work of people I deeply respected, and then walk away feeling inspired for about 10 minutes before slipping back into my same old patterns. It wasn't that I didn't want to change, it's that I kept treating their success like a secret code written in a language I'd never learn, mysterious, inaccessible, and meant for someone else. But then, something shifted. I stopped looking at their achievements as miracles and started looking at their processes as maps. I realized success doesn't hide its blueprint, it leaves clues everywhere for anyone willing to pay attention. Welcome, I'm really glad you're here. This isn't a channel about comparison or envy. It's about curiosity, about noticing the quiet patterns behind the noise and asking, what can I learn from this? If that's the kind of perspective you're hungry for, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to Elevate Your Daily. It's how we stay connected as we turn observation into action. Today, I want to share what happened when I stopped idolizing success and started studying it, when I shifted from I could never to what's the pattern here? This isn't about copying someone else's life. It's about borrowing their operating system and adapting it to your own mission. Through my own journaling, experiments, and many failed attempts, I've come to see that the gap between average and exceptional isn't talent or luck, it's attention to detail. To help me decode what I was seeing, I began asking myself 5 questions that went beyond surface-level admiration and dug into the real mechanics of how people build meaningful, lasting success. These are the 5 questions I'll explore. 1. What consistent, unglamorous habit shows up in almost every high achiever I admire, no matter their field? 2. Where do they invest their energy that most people waste on noise? 3. How do they respond to setbacks differently, not in words, but in actions? 4. What do they say no to that the rest of us keep saying yes to out of guilt or habit? 5. What's one small piece of their daily rhythm I could test in my own life this week without overhauling everything? Let me walk you through what I discovered, not as a theory, but as a lived experiment. 1. What consistent, unglamorous habit shows up in almost every high achiever I admire, no matter their field? I used to think success was built on grand gestures, the viral launch, the big break, the overnight breakthrough. But when I actually started tracking the routines of people I respected, artists, founders, scientists, writers, I noticed something humbling. They all protected one thing with near religious discipline, their morning focus block. Not for meditation, though some did that too, not for email, but for deep, uninterrupted work on their most important project before the world had a chance to demand anything from them. I read about a novelist who wrote 500 words every day before breakfast, no matter what. I learned that a tech founder I admired scheduled her first 3 hours for strategic thinking with her phone in another room. Even a ceramicist I follow posts stories of being at her wheel by 6 a.m., alone with her craft. It wasn't about being a morning person. It was about prioritizing creation over consumption, agency over reactivity. So I tried it. I blocked 90 minutes every morning for my writing, no exceptions. The first week, I fidgeted. The second week, I resisted. By the third week, something shifted. In those 90 minutes, I was producing more meaningful work than I had in 6 months of busy afternoons. The clue wasn't flashy. It was boring, consistent, and human. And it was everywhere, if I was willing to see it. 2. Where do they invest their energy that most people waste on noise? Here's what I noticed. Average achievers react. High achievers initiate. Most of us spend our days in defense mode, answering emails, putting out fires, scrolling headlines, managing other people's expectations. Our energy is scattered, reactive, and depleted by noon. But the people I studied, they treated their attention like a finite resource. They didn't just manage their time, they managed their input. I saw it in how they curated their environment. One entrepreneur I follow only checks email twice a day and never before noon. A researcher I admire deleted all social media apps from her phone years ago. A musician I respect spends his first hour listening to music deeply, not browsing it passively. They weren't being disciplined, they were being intentional. They knew that your output is only as good as your input, and they refused to let noise dictate their creative fuel. So I did an audit. I tracked my attention for 3 days and was stunned to see how much of it was given away, for free, to things that added zero value to my life or work. I started small. I turned off all non-essential notifications, I unsubscribed from 20 email lists, I stopped just checking my phone during transitions. The result? More mental space, more clarity, more energy for what actually mattered. The clue wasn't in what they did more of, but in what they stopped doing. 3. How do they respond to setbacks differently? Not in words, but in actions. I used to think resilience was about mindset, about staying positive and believing in yourself. But when I looked closer at how high performers actually behaved after a failure, I saw something different. They didn't just bounce back, they debriefed. After a product launch failed, one founder didn't post an inspirational quote. She gathered her team and asked, "What did we learn?" and documented 3 actionable changes for next time. When a writer's book was rejected by 30 publishers, he didn't quit, he used the feedback to refine his pitch and sent it to 10 more. Their response wasn't emotional, it was operational. They treated failure not as a verdict, but as data. I realized I was doing the opposite. When something didn't work, I'd either spiral into self-criticism or sweep it under the rug with a vague "next time." I wasn't learning, I was hiding. So I built a simple ritual. After any setback, I ask myself just 2 questions. What part of this was within my control, and what's one thing I'll do differently next time? No drama, no self-flagellation, just clear, honest reflection. That tiny shift turned my relationship with failure upside down. It's no longer something to fear, it's my most honest teacher. And that's a clue anyone can follow. 4. What do they say no to that the rest of us keep saying yes to out of guilt or habit? This one hit me hardest. I noticed that the most impactful people I studied were also the most ruthless about their no. They said no not to be rude, they said no to protect their yes. They said no to meetings with no clear agenda, projects that didn't align with their core mission, social obligations that drained them without nourishing them, and opportunities that were good but not great. Meanwhile, I was saying yes to everything, to be helpful, to be liked, to avoid awkwardness, and my calendar was a graveyard of other people's priorities. I read an interview where a best-selling author said, "I say no to 99% of requests so I can say yes with my full heart to the 1% that matters." That redefined generosity for me. True generosity isn't spreading yourself thin, it's showing up fully where it counts. So I started practicing strategic no's. I declined a speaking invite that didn't align with my message. I stopped attending a weekly meeting I wasn't adding value to. I told a friend I couldn't be their emergency contact during a busy season. Each no felt uncomfortable at first, but each one also freed up space, mental, emotional, temporal, for what truly mattered. The clue wasn't in their charisma, it was in their boundaries. 5. What's one small piece of their daily rhythm I could test in my own life this week without overhauling everything? This is where I finally stopped feeling overwhelmed. Instead of trying to copy someone's entire life, I started asking, what's one tiny transferable habit I can borrow just for a week? Not how do I become like them, but what's one thing they do that I can try just for 3 days? I tested a writer's shitty first draft rule, write without editing for 20 minutes no matter how bad it feels. I tried a founder's Sunday planning hour, map the week's top 3 priorities every Sunday night. I even copied a chef's habit of starting the day with 10 minutes of silence, no phone, no input. Most of these didn't stick, but some did, and the ones that did became foundational. This approach removed the pressure of perfection. I wasn't trying to copy someone's entire life. I was running experiments, and experiments can't fail. They only produce data. That mindset shift was everything, because now when I admire someone's work, I don't feel jealous, I get curious. I look for the clues and test them in my own lab. So, if you're ready to stop wishing and start learning, here's one practical step you can take this week. Pick one person whose work or life you admire and study just one piece of their